Now, we've been talking here in this series about monsters, which we're in the middle of right now. We've been talking about these monsters that we face in our Christian journey. If baptism is like the Israelites being freed from Pharaoh, then, that's the baptism, that's the come to Jesus moment. They pass through the water. This is the point that Paul makes in 1 Corinthians. If that's what baptism is like, then these monsters that we're talking about in this series are the ones that we meet in the wilderness after that moment. That's what the Israelites did. They spent some time in the wilderness, and you always will see these memes on Facebook where they get on the Google Maps or something, and it's like, how long does it take to actually walk through the wilderness from Egypt to, where Israel is today? And it's like, not that long. They went in a lot of circles. I imagine they stayed in one spot for a while and move on, whatever. However it is, they winded their way through that wilderness. They met a lot of monsters there that they had to overcome. Last week we talked about the more monster. They wanted that quail. They just more and more and more. And they're not satisfied with the things that God has given them. They need more and more and more and more and more. Well, this week we're going to be talking about the mine monster. Mine. Isn't there one of those movies where the seagulls were mine? Yeah, that one. That monster. It's annoying. Why do we say it all the time? We're going to begin with this haunting moment in the Gospel of John. You can turn there if you will. This is the very last chapter, John chapter 21. We know this as Adventists because Jesus cooks fish. And it's scandalous to us. What was he thinking? Oh man, I was just meeting with... I kid you not, okay? I was just meeting a professor at one of our universities, was driving through Peoria earlier this week. We went out to lunch, and he was saying, didn't I ever tell you the story about the potluck police? He used to pastor before he started teaching. And I was like, no, I never heard this story. And he said there would be somebody in the church who'd walk down the line of all the food at potluck, make sure it's all kosher, okay? And kosher is our Adventist euphemism for like no meat, whatever. So he would do this. Well, it turns out there was a family member of one of the members of the church who was not Adventist, and it was this particular Sabbath. This family member used to drop off the member and then head off and go do their own thing until church was over. Well, this Sabbath, for whatever reason, it clicked with this family member. I'm going to join them today. And so he told the pastor, he told my friend, and I'm going to go home and get some fish that I had cooked, and I'm going to bring it because I don't want to come empty-handed. Well, the pastor said, you don't have to do that. Honestly, you don't have to do that. You're going to be okay. He's like, no, I insist. I'm going home to get this fish because I'm not coming empty-handed. Okay, well, come on. Brought the fish, and the pastor said, my ministry right now was to run interference with the potluck police until the fish was eaten. And so he'd be over there in the corner talking to him. Hey, brother, one more thing. What do you think about this? Look over here. What do you think about this? Trying to distract him. But that wasn't long before he goes, that smells like fish. And he walks over, and sure enough, he finds a dish with the fish. And he says, who brought fish here? So the pastor was trying to explain, look, okay, it's all right. And he says, no, it's not all right. We can't eat fish. And the pastor says, well, Jesus ate fish. And kid you not, this is what he told me. The potluck police said, well, Jesus didn't have all the truth. He didn't have Ellen White. So, Jesus didn't have Ellen White. I kid you not. If you're at that point in your life, something is seriously wrong with your Christianity, okay? Now, the reason why we do this, in case you're wondering, is I would say that probably at least half or more people in any Adventist church probably do eat meat. But just to be a lowest common denominator, most churches don't typically bring meat to the churches just because that way the people who don't eat meat can eat whatever they want. But there are, of course, plenty of Adventist churches that do have meat. So I'm just letting you guys know if you're wondering, like, wow, this is really weird. That's not standard. It's not standard to have potluck police. Jesus didn't have all the truth. Lord have mercy. We're going to disfellowship that man on the spot and rebaptize him later because that's just, I don't know what to say to you, buddy. By the way, we do have a potluck downstairs, and it's haystacks today, so perfectly safe. Please don't bring any fish. All right. Fish tacos. Fish tacos. It's going to be tofu fish, so you know you don't want any of that. Anyways, back in John chapter 21, I had no plan to tell you that story. This is Jesus talking to Peter after Peter had denied him, and he says, very truly, I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted, but when you are old, Peter, you're going to stretch out your hands, and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go. And Jesus said this to indicate what kind of death by which, the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. And then he said to him, follow me. That's the worst sales pitch in the history of sales pitches. You know, it's like going to a car dealership and they're like, yeah, you like this car? Okay, good. It's a great car. But at some point, you driving it, you're going to get in a crash and die. So how much do you want to pay for the car? What's your offer? It's like, you know, maybe not. Maybe not. But Peter doesn't back up. And reading this text this week, it just made me stop and think, if Jesus came to me and said, Matthew, I want you to follow me, by the way, if you do, at some point in your life, people are going to, when you get older, they're going to take you where you don't want to go, and they're going to crucify you. So you're going to follow me? Like, okay. Probably could have left that a mystery for me, Jesus, and just, you know, like other people, just told me to follow you. Okay, I can do that. But knowing how it ends, would you still do it? Would you still do it? I mean, imagine being Peter. Peter has a birthday. You're 1 year closer. You don't know exactly when it's going to be, but you're 1 year closer, Peter. Or Peter's in a town somewhere, and he sees some Roman soldiers over in the corner of the market congregating, and they're whispering to each other. Are they talking about me? Is this the day they're going to come for me? Am I in trouble now? You know, like you never know when that day is coming. You live your whole life knowing that what Jesus said is true. And at some point, it's going to come true for you, but you don't know when that is. Boy, how would that change the way you live your life? Would you make every moment count a little bit more, not knowing if you ever get a chance to do that again? Would you be a little bit more on fire, a little bit more purposeful in the way that you live your life? What am I saying, though? We're Adventists. We believe that day is coming. Yeah. We believe every moment counts. Whether we see Jesus in our lifetime or it's the next generation or what it may be, we know we all have an end coming. Jesus may not tell us specifically when and how that's going to happen, but we know it's coming. So really, what's the difference? He just gave Peter a few more details about it. He's still calling us to follow him. And we still know that his call upon our life is to the end. And we know that the evil one doesn't like it when he calls us to follow him. It will make our life difficult as he made it difficult for Peter. But I think what makes me uneasy about this text is not so much the fact that Peter or myself or somebody is going to die at some point for following Jesus. What makes me uneasy is the way that Jesus describes it. He says, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went wherever you want. But when you get old, someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not go. And that offends the mind monster within me. Because I can handle this great kind of Braveheart moment of martyrdom for Jesus, at least in my mind. You know, like, yes, it's heroic. But the idea of someone dressing me against my will, presumably, right? Because I can't do it myself or won't do it myself. Somebody leading me where I don't want to go. It's this loss of autonomy over my own life that I don't like in what Jesus says here. You know, I don't mind being crucified for you, Lord, or dying for you, Lord, but I want to be in control the whole way. And Jesus is really, I mean, just if you have any degree of pride in you whatsoever, it's just a gut punch. Hey, there's going to come a time where you're going to have no control over your life whatsoever, and then they're going to kill you. They're going to do to you what they want. And I don't like that, because the mind monster, that part of us that wants to have control over my life, over the places I go, over what I wear, over what becomes of me, right? That's the mind monster. And we often say that it's my property. And it's my body, and it's my money, and they're my rights. Like, these are the things that we repeat so often in our lives. Like, they're mine. It's mine, it's mine, it's mine. We want other people to recognize what is mine, and you keep what's yours, but you let me have what's mine, because it's mine, 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 mine. It reminds me of that song in Pocahontas, which I will never attempt to sing for you. Right, where the bad guy's like, it's mine, dig, 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 it's all mine, discovered this land, it's mine. And I mean, of course, in a certain sense, you do own the property, and of course, in a certain sense, it is your body, and of course, in a certain sense, you do have rights, and it is your money, which you earned, okay? But I think when we speak that way, it can mask what is the ultimate truth, which is that all of it belongs to God. So there is a sense in which this stuff is mine. Yeah. But there's a greater sense in which none of it is mine. Does that make sense? Yeah. And both of those things are true. They are your kids. It is your house. It is your paycheck in your bank account. But in a greater sense, it's all his. And it's not mine. And this is what Jesus is trying to get Peter to embrace here in the end of the Gospel of John. That in a sense, Peter, it's not up to you where you go. It's not up to you how you die, whether you live or not, Peter. In a sense, it's not up to you when you put on clothes in the morning. Like what the power you think you have over your life, the control you think you have over your life, it's not really yours to control. You're going to have to accept that, buddy. The earliest Christians fought the mind monster when they sold their property and donated the money to the church. We have this story in the book of Acts. And they did this so that the poor church members would have enough to eat and they would have clothes to wear and all these sort of things. They did this. But then we have a story of two of these Christians who did also sell their property, Ananias and Sapphira. And what was the problem with them? What did they do wrong here? Yeah, they donated money to the church. Let's say they sold something that was worth $100,000, okay? We don't know what they sold. And then they would tell the church something like, well, we sold it for $50,000, so they would keep half and they would donate half to the church. Now, it was theirs, and Peter makes this point. It was your property. You could donate as much as you want to the church or as little to the church or not sell it at all. The problem was you lied and said, we sold it for $50,000, and here it is. They wanted to appear to be generous to the church. They wanted, other people were selling their property and donating it to the church, and we want to be seen as like them, even though we aren't. Oh, man, we've never had that temptation in church, right? Where it's like, I want to be seen as holier than I really am. I want to be seen as more knowledgeable than I really am. I want to be seen as a better Christian than I really am. So let me put on this mask. Let me put on this appearance and go blend in. But they didn't belong. And through the Holy Spirit, Peter called them out on it. And they gave in to the mind monster, right? It wasn't so much that they didn't give all of it. It's just that they lied about what they gave, because they wanted to keep some for themselves while still appearing to be like everybody else. Didn't they know that when someone is baptized, like they probably were, and they go under the water, they have died to self? Right. Like, didn't they realize that whole that way of thinking should have been dead? Because the very act of baptism is a declaration that my life is no longer my own. Because I can't get myself to rise up from the grave. That has to be the power of God in my life. I can't get myself to rise up through the water, right? And this is part of the symbolic success of baptism together, right? It's not one person baptizing themselves. It's you have two people in the water in an act of baptism, and the one who is being baptized is, in that sense, entirely dependent on the one who is doing the baptizing. Just like we are entirely dependent on Jesus to not only to die to self. We can't do it without him because we're unwilling to do it. Every instinct in us wants to survive and keep going. And we can't die to self without him, and we can't come back out and be raised to life without him either. That's what it's all about. That who I am and what I am and what I have is a gift from God. That's what baptism is telling us. Everything about it is a gift from God. Even when Jesus stood before Pontius Pilate at his trial, Pilate wants to just flex a little bit, right? He's flexing. And he says, don't you know that I have the power to either kill you, to crucify you, or let you go? Don't you know I have the power to do that? Right? Because it's like, how dumb can you be, Jesus? Like, don't you know who you're dealing with? Don't you know your life is on the line here? Don't you know that you better really show me some respect and deference here, because I've got you in my hand. What is Jesus telling? You remember what Jesus tells him? You've got nothing You've got no power if it hadn't been given to you from above. Amen. All right, what is he telling them? Yeah, in a real sense. I mean, of course, there's a sense in which Pilate does have power. He's a governor of Judea, right? People respect him and fear him. He's got soldiers under his command. He's in charge of keeping the peace. But in a deeper sense, Jesus is reminding him, you've got nothing. That you've got nothing. Oh. This is a reminder for all of us. There is a sense in which we have what we have, but there's a deeper sense in which we have nothing without him. Whatever power you have in life, whatever control you have over your life is a gift given to you by God. It is derived. You may have power, but you are not in and of yourself powerful. You're just a human being like other human beings. What you have has been given to you. All right, let's get through a few more here. For instance, in Deuteronomy 8, verse 17 to 18, it says, you may say to yourself, my power and the strength of my hands have produced this wealth for me. But God tells the Israelites, remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the ability to produce wealth. All right, so even if you have a great job where you make lots of money and your work is highly esteemed, it's like you realize the stuff you know or the things that you can do with your hands are still a gift from him. It's not really coming from you in the deepest sense, right? It's a gift from him. He's given you those skills, those abilities. You go over to Psalm 50, and it says, God says, for every animal in the forest is mine, and the cattle on 1,000 hills, right? I own the animals. And then, let's just go to this super slide here. In Exodus, he says, the whole earth is mine. In Leviticus, he says, the land is mine, and you reside in my land as foreigners and strangers. Right? It's your property. You have the title to it. But God's saying, but it's mine. It's my earth, and you just live here. You ever have your parent tell you that? It's my house, and you just live here? Yeah. Well, I challenge you to go back and tell your parent, actually, it's God's land, and you just live here. And see what happens to you. It does not always pay to be theologically correct, okay? There's a time for that. In Psalm 60, it says, Gilead is mine, Manasseh is mine, and Ezekiel, he says, the Nile is mine. And Haggai says, the silver is mine, and the gold is mine. In case you don't understand, it's all his. Like, that's the whole point here. It's all his. Everything we have is God's. And so let's not think that we control things around here. Yeah, in a certain sense. Of course, Laura and I own our house. In a certain sense, this is my body, and I don't want people doing procedures on me and things without my permission, right? We have autonomy over our own bodies. It's my family, and it's my career, and all these things. But the deeper truth is that all of this is his. There's one more twist, though, and then I'll be done. There's one more twist to it. And that is that this deeper truth, that everything is his, leads us to one final truth. That's here in John chapter 17, where Jesus says, all I have is yours. All I have is yours. But what does that mean? Because Jesus will go on to say, here in 1 Corinthians, let's see if we can scoot over there. Look at this. Look at what inspiration has for us. Paul says, so then no more boasting about human leaders. All things are what? Yours. Whether it's Paul or Apollos or Cephas, Peter, they're arguing about who their favorite celebrity pastor is. I know we don't do that anymore. It's hard to understand. But he's like, it doesn't matter. They're all yours. Or the world, or life, or death, or the present, or the future. All are yours, and you are of Christ, and Christ is of God. This is the great irony, isn't it? Because this is the process, the journey that we all have to take as human beings. The first step is to realize that I can't have ultimate control over my life because it's not my life, it's his life that he has given me. It's a gift from God. So you get to a place in your life where you're like, you look at the mind monster and say, I'm going to resist you. I'm not going to insist on controlling my own life. I'm not going to insist on thinking I own all this stuff and it can't be taken away from me and I have these invincible eternal rights to things. No. I relinquish control over the things in my life, over the course my life takes, over the stuff I own. I recognize that it is all his. Right? And that's what all those texts, God was reminding us. Don't start thinking that I earned this, I worked for this, I built this, it's mine, mine, mine. God's like, no, actually it's all mine, and you guys are there by my grace and for my and pleasure, because I love you. I've given you guys all this, but it's not yours. It doesn't belong to you. And once we accept that, and we look at Jesus, and he says, everything is mine, but I'm giving it all to you. So now, in the end, once we have Jesus, we had more than we ever had before. But so long as I insist on holding on to the things that are mine, this is all I will ever have, and even this will be taken away from me in the end because I can't take it with me. You know, at least the mug. No, you can't even take the mug with you. You can't take it with you. So the process to be the kind of human beings who thrive and find joy and purpose in life and connect with their Creator, we have to be willing to let go of this stuff and say, you know what, Lord, it's yours. And the paradox is, once we do that, God says, all of this is yours because you're with me. Isn't that amazing? It's like, what does Paul say? Is that don't even boast about human stuff because it's all things are yours. It's the world is yours. Life is yours. Death is yours. The present is yours. The future is yours. All are yours, and you are of Christ. Right? They're all yours because they're all His, and He has bestowed them upon you. So we will inherit an earth and have so much more than we have down here precisely because we gave up this stuff and recognize that it's not mine, it doesn't belong to me, I have no control over it. I just want Him, and that's enough. And if you give up everything in your life just to hold on to Jesus, you'll find that holding on to Jesus, you have more there in your hands than you ever would have had in your life. That's the paradox of this Christian journey. That's how the mind monster is defeated in our lives. And so that's why, you know, we've got nothing. We cast our crowns at His feet in Revelation. Like when we're redeemed, we're like, I'm not worthy of a crown. But He gives us a crown anyway. Why? Because we're royal? Because we're part of this divine family by nature? It's like, no, because of His grace. He's like, hey, I died for you. You have my blood on your life. That is royal blood. And you belong now. Well, why do I have this blood on my life? Why? Because I have been willing to die to myself in baptism. I've given up my own life, and so instead of my blood running through my veins, spiritually speaking, I have His blood running through my veins, and now that entitles me to more than I could ever have before, not because of anything I've done, but because I let go of the life I was living and let His life be in me. And that's the moment we all have to come to. And this, you know, God's been calling us and calling us and calling us, and maybe we've been putting off the baptism thing. Maybe we've been scared to take that plunge with Him. But like, you can't have anything in life until you come to that moment where you just let go. And then you find yourself fussing less about what you deserve from your boss, or what you feel is owed to you by life because of the raw hand that you've been dealt. And I'm not saying you can't want a promotion, and I'm not saying you can't genuinely want better opportunities in life, but you realize I don't need that stuff to be happy. I don't need that stuff to have purpose. I don't need that stuff to have an identity, right? I have Jesus, and if Jesus plus nothing is more than enough for me. Yeah. I give it all to Him. It's all His. So all things are yours when you have Jesus. The problem with Jesus' promise to Peter, his call to Peter here in John chapter 21, is that He intimates that Peter will be crucified, and crucifixion is, it represents the ultimate loss of control in my life. It's humiliating, it's painful, it's final. It's not the way to go. If I was going to pick, how do you want to die? Crucifixion is somewhere near the bottom. What Jesus is asking Peter to do here is to do the impossible, to overcome the mind monster, to kind of come to a point in your life where, all right, well, if that's how I have to die, so be it. I'm okay with that. Right? I think sometimes Jesus says things that are designed to provoke. If we have that pride in ourselves, if we have that mind monster in our heart, He will rise up and say, no, absolutely not. We're not going that way. So I think sometimes Jesus says things that's like, if you've got that monster in you, He's going to pop up And then you're going to see for yourself. You look in that mirror, you'll see that he's controlling your life. But Jesus is asking Peter to do the impossible, to overcome this mind monster. And except it's not impossible because of who was asking Peter to do it. When Jesus invites Peter to accept his own fate, the fate of following Jesus is going to lead to crucifixion. He's only asking Peter to do what Jesus has already done for Peter. When you divorce this statement, this invitation from its context, it seems like an impossible thing that Jesus is asking Peter. But we have to remember what just happened. Jesus never asked anyone to die for him or to live for him, except Jesus first lived and died for them. He's never asked us to do something he himself has not already done for us. And I think when that's your starting point in this life of faith, that I am grateful to the Son of God for living and dying for me. He can ask me to do anything he wants and I'll do it. It's not too hard. How can the mind monster survive when I'm standing there witnessing Jesus on the cross? How can I stand there and say, but it's my house, but it's my money? But when the God of heaven emptied himself, as Philippians 2 tells us, and took on the form of a human being and died for us, and I'm going to stand there and say, but it's mine, but it's mine, but it's mine. I have rights. It's mine this, it's my that, it's my... He didn't do that to us.
No, he didn't.
He emptied himself of all that was his. He did not consider his equality with God something to be held on to, something to be grasped in the older translations, right? But he emptied himself of it. He defeated the mind monster before he asked us to defeat the mind monster, before he asked us to relinquish control over our life. And that's why we can accept the call when Jesus says, follow me. Man, Peter knew it. If he can die for me, I can die for him. I don't mind giving up everything because I'm not giving up anything he already doesn't own. So if I die so that I can be with him, then in the end, all things are mine because all things are his. Man, do you understand what Jesus, he ain't playing with us, man. Like you get to Revelation and he sits on his throne. When we see the Father on his throne, okay. But then what does he do in Revelation 20? It says thrones were set up for the saints. Like he gives us a throne. I don't deserve a throne and I don't deserve a crown. But Jesus is just constantly like, no, don't sit down there. Come up here. I have a throne for you right here. What does he promise the 7 churches? He says, I'm going to give you the right to sit with me on my throne. I don't know. I mean, I know how I feel about that. And I am not at all comfortable with it. Because I don't feel I have any right whatsoever to sit with Jesus on his throne. I don't. Even in following him, I'm only doing, it's only a shadow of what he's done for me. It's only an imperfect path, from my perspective. But he's always calling us higher and he's always calling us closer. And if we sit with him on his throne, then that means everything that he has authority over, we have authority over because of him. I can't get my head around that. And here we are, we're just squabbling over a few trinkets in this life. When Jesus has a throne over the entire universe and he's inviting us to sit on it with him. But it's my house and it's my money. And it's my job, and I want to choose what I'm going to do in my life. Man, Lord, help us. Father God, if we're struggling with that mind monster, Lord, that desire to control our lives, that desire to hold on to what few things we have because they're ours, and you stay in your spot, God, and we're going to stay in our property. And just forgive us and give us the grace we need to get to start at the foot of the cross and realize that the mind monster is just worse than useless in our lives. It holds us back. It's our enemy. It will prevent us from having the kind of life that you have designed for us to have, this eternal kind of life. The mind monster, Lord, is just entirely concerned with these 70, 80, 90, 100 years down here. That's all it cares about. And it can't see past them. It can't see the promises that you have extended to us for life eternal. A life that isn't just life in some corner, some desolation, but a life of reigning with you. Because we have been baptized into your Son's name. because we have followed him on that path to death and resurrection. None of us are going to sit here and say that we're worthy of it. But none of us are going to sit here and reject it either. We'll take it. We'll take what you're offering, Lord. It's not because we've earned it, but because you have, and you're sharing it. So we're just thankful for the promises we have in Jesus, for the life that he has offered us, Lord. And we would that those who are around us, whom we love, would see it and would enjoy it with us. This isn't like a selfish person winning the lottery and wanting to hoard it. We want to share it. We want to share eternity with each other. We want to gather as a Peoria church in a new earth someday and have a potluck. We look forward to that day. May it come soon. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.